So I was talking to an old friend recently, and the way he looked at me when he told this story, I knew it was real. It wasn't just fear in his voice, it was something darker. These 3 true stories come from people who had normal plans. Camping with a friend, relaxing in a forest cabin, visiting an old buddy for the weekend, until something went terribly wrong. What happened next left them haunted, possibly watched, possibly hunted, and very nearly never seen again. So grab your headphones, turn off the lights, and remember, some doors should never be opened. This is Night Terror 10, and these are 3 terrifying encounters you'll wish were fiction. The man who wasn't me. So I was talking to my cousin Mark one night over some drinks, and he brought up that camping trip we took 2 summers ago. The one we never really talk about anymore. Not because we forgot it, but because remembering it still gives us both that tight, sick feeling in our stomachs. He asked if I still had the old satellite messenger we used back then. I said I did, and when I picked it up later that night, I swear my hands started shaking just holding it. It all started when Mark and I decided to head out to a place deep in the Allegheny Forest in Pennsylvania. I'd camped there plenty of times on my own. It was peaceful, untouched, and remote, like really remote. No marked trails led to the clearing I usually used, but if you knew where to cut through the trees, you'd find the perfect campsite near a little rise that gave you a view of the sunset through the pines. Mark had never been there before, but he was no stranger to camping. We hiked in with our gear, set up camp around 6, and just did the usual. Got a fire going, made some food, popped open a couple of beers, and watched the sky bleed orange and purple above us. About 2 hours in, while we were swapping ghost stories and laughing over dumb stuff from high school, we heard something crunch just outside the glow of our fire. It wasn't loud, just a soft step. A branch, maybe. We both paused and looked out into the blackness, but saw nothing. I remember shining my flashlight and catching a quick glint, like light reflecting off eyes, but it vanished just as quick. Could have been a raccoon or a deer, I told myself. Common out here. The rest of the night went by without much else. We got tired, doused the fire, and climbed into our tents. That's the thing about the woods. You start to learn the difference between normal sounds and off ones. That night still felt normal, or at least we thought it did. The next morning, we got up early. There's this hidden pond about a half-mile deeper into the woods, a secret spot even locals don't know about. It's cut off from any official trails and has this tiny, clear waterfall spilling over mossy rocks. The place is pure magic. We spent 3, maybe 4 hours there, just floating around, skipping stones, and forgetting that the world outside existed. By the time we got back to camp, the sun had started sliding back toward the horizon. We were lazy about gathering firewood, having used most of it the night before, so we split up to find more. Mark wanted to explore the ridge trail nearby, so he wandered off with his little hatchet and said he'd grab sticks on his way back. I stayed behind to scavenge near the creek. Time passed. I got a decent pile together and sat by the tent, waiting. The sun, since we didn't have cell service out there, we relied on our satellite messengers, little devices clipped to our belts for emergencies or short texts. I grabbed mine to ping him, but right as I turned it on, I saw a message from him. Kinda got turned around, think I ended up back at the pond. I responded immediately. Stay put, I'll come get you. Even if he was a little disoriented, he'd know it was smarter to stay still than try to navigate back. I knew every tree and turn between the campsite and that pond. I moved fast, wanting to beat the dark. My headlamp was packed just in case, But navigating dense woods in pitch black, even with a light, is risky as hell. About halfway there, my messenger buzzed again. "I see you." I stopped. Just froze. What the hell did that mean? I typed back. "I'm not there yet. Where do you see me?" No response. I started jogging. The branches clawed at my arms and face. When I reached the tree line before the pond, I stopped again, breath ragged, eyes scanning. Nothing. Not a single ripple on the water. Not a footstep. Not Mark. I called his name. Echo. Nothing else. I checked the device. He hadn't opened my last message. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. With the sun almost completely gone, I decided to head back before the woods swallowed everything. I was maybe 2 minutes from camp when I saw it. Faint and flickering. Firelight. Our fire was lit again. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even arranged the wood. As I got closer, I saw someone standing beside the fire. Their back was turned, but the figure was off. Tall, lanky, standing too still. Something about the posture didn't feel right. I felt a weird mix of relief and dread. I thought, maybe it's Mark. Maybe he found his way back. I called his name. The figure turned and ran. Not toward me. Away. Fast. Vanishing into the woods like a deer flushed from the brush. My heart jumped into my throat. That was not Mark. I ran to the fire, looking around. Whoever it was had reignited our campfire. But why? Then I heard crashing through the trees. Spinning around, I saw Mark stumble into the clearing, wide-eyed and pale. "We need to go, now," he said. "That guy, that wasn't you." I asked him what happened. He said he was at the pond when he saw someone approaching through the brush. He thought it was me at first. He even shouted my name, but the person didn't respond, just kept walking. Then, when they stepped into the light, he realized their face wasn't quite right. He couldn't explain it, said it looked too smooth, like skin stretched over something it didn't fit. The man just smiled, way too wide. When we finally made it to the car and locked the doors, we just sat in silence for a long time. Both of us were shaking. What chills me to the bone even now isn't just the messages or the fact that someone was in our camp. It's the thought that they were probably there the whole time, watching, waiting, testing how far we'd separate, listening to our conversations, standing outside our tents while we slept. We haven't been back since, and we won't. The knock that wasn't meant to be answered. A friend of mine, Jason, told me this after he got back from a solo weekend getaway last fall. And man, it messed with me more than I'd like to admit. I remember he looked completely different when he told me. Not just tired, but like hollowed out, like something about him didn't come back from that trip. He said he booked this cheap Airbnb somewhere in northern Vermont. Didn't choose it for the views or the amenities. He just wanted something isolated, far from the city, somewhere quiet where he could disconnect. The listing showed a small old-style cabin tucked into the woods, just outside a tiny town called Ashbrook. So small it didn't even show up properly on Google Maps unless you zoomed all the way in. It was the only listing in the area, and the price was a steal. The drive there was mostly empty roads winding through dense forest. Jason said the trees got so thick at one point he felt like the world had vanished behind him. By the time he reached the cabin, the sun was hanging low behind the evergreens, casting shadows like fingers across the gravel driveway. The place looked old but functional. One-story creaky porch, no neighbors in sight. Not a soul around. He dropped his bags inside, and the first thing he noticed was how silent everything was. No birds, no wind, just the groan of the floorboards when he stepped. The plan was simple. grab groceries, head back, and hole up for a couple days with books and old movies. So he headed into town, and that's where things started to feel off. It was mid-afternoon, but the streets were empty. No kids, no traffic, just a weird stillness. At the only grocery store, there were maybe 4 or 5 people inside, and every one of them stopped what they were doing to stare at him as he passed. Not just glances, stares, like they were all reading something off him that he didn't understand. He tried to brush it off. Small town, unfamiliar face, maybe they just didn't like outsiders. But he couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just that. He paid and got out of there quick, deciding that for the rest of the trip, he wasn't leaving the cabin again. That night was uneventful, quiet, peaceful even. The next day too. But that second night, everything changed. A storm rolled in sometime after dinner. Wind howling, rain pounding the windows, branches tapping against the roof. Jason was half asleep on the couch with some random movie playing in the background when, knock, knock, someone hit the front door. He said it didn't sound frantic or aggressive, just deliberate. 2 knocks, then silence. He sat up straight. There were no nearby homes, no cell service, no one who would just show up out here, especially not in the middle of a storm. He checked his phone. Slowly he walked to the door and peered through the side window. Pitch black. No motion-activated light. Just the sound of the storm and the darkness pressing up against the glass. He didn't open it, didn't call out. Eventually he convinced himself it might have been the wind, knocking something loose. He went back to the couch and tried to pretend it hadn't happened. An hour later, it happened again. Except this time, there was no knock. There was a cough. A sharp, muffled cough, like someone trying to suppress it, but it came from right outside the window, behind the couch. Jason froze. He slowly turned and caught, just for a split second, movement outside the window. A blur, a silhouette, gone before his brain could even register what it was. He called 911. Somehow, by some miracle, the call went through. 3 minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up. The officer, a middle-aged guy with a stone-cold face and wet hat hair, looked more annoyed than concerned. Jason spilled everything, but the guy didn't take notes, didn't ask questions, just looked around casually and said, "Well, I don't see anyone. Probably just your imagination. Call again if something happens." And with that, he turned and drove away. Jason was stunned, not just by how dismissive the cop was, but by the look he gave him before leaving. That same look the townsfolk had given him earlier, like Jason wasn't supposed to be here, like they all knew something he didn't. He started packing. He said maybe a minute after the cruiser left, there came another round of knocks. But these weren't like before. These were violent, fist-pounding, rapid, angry knocks that didn't stop. He didn't go near the door this time. He peeked from the bedroom window and saw no sign of the cop's car, just the storm and the shadows. And whoever was knocking, whoever had been watching, was still out there. He packed in a frenzy, stuffing whatever he could into his backpack, thought about calling the cops again, but something deep in his gut told him don't. He didn't trust that officer, didn't trust anyone in this town. Then the banging stopped. The cabin fell into that heavy, storm-muted silence again. Jason waited, listening, breathing. Finally he crept to the front door, one hand on the knob, one clutching his keys. Before he could open it, he instinctively turned and glanced at the window beside the fireplace. There, movement, a shape, a face, watching. He didn't wait. He threw the door open and bolted into the storm, backpack flapping behind him. He sprinted to his car, flung the door open, and peeled out of the driveway so fast the tires kicked up gravel and mud. He said the rain was so heavy he could barely see past the hood. He didn't look in the rear view. He didn't stop driving until he crossed back into cell service and daylight and normal. When he finally made it home, he didn't sleep for 2 nights. And he never reported the Airbnb, never left a review. He said he didn't want to draw any more attention, didn't want anyone from that place knowing who he was. To this day, he's convinced the whole town was in on it, that the cabin wasn't just rented, it was bait, and he walked right into it. He told me, if I had stayed even 10 more minutes, I don't think I would have come back at all. The room he built for me. So I was catching up with a friend of mine, Zane, over dinner a few weeks back when he dropped something that stuck with me. He said, "Man, you ever spend a whole weekend wondering if someone you trusted was about to do something unforgivable?" I asked what he meant. And that's when he told me what happened the last time he saw his old college buddy, Grant. They were close in college, played on the same intramural basketball team, pulled all-nighters gaming, even helped each other through some breakups. After graduating, life pulled them in different directions. Zane took a job in Columbus, while Grant stayed in a small rural town about 3 hours out, in a fixer-upper house he bought with his girlfriend right out of school. They kept in touch, texts, late-night gaming, the occasional call, but they hadn't seen each other in over a year, until one Thursday night. Zane got a call. It was Grant. His voice sounded off, sluggish, like he'd just woken up, or maybe had the flu. But he said his girlfriend was out of town for the weekend and asked if Zane wanted to come visit, said it would be like old times. Zane didn't think twice, packed a bag, picked up some snacks and drinks on the way, and made the drive out to that quiet little town where Grant now lived. He got to the house around 4:30 p.m. on Friday. The place was run down and isolated, no neighbors, no streetlights, nothing but trees and a cracked driveway swallowed by weeds. He knocked on the door. No answer. Knocked again. Still nothing. Just as he was pulling out his phone to call, the door opened. Grant stood there, eyes heavy, movements slow. He looked pale, like he hadn't slept in days. But he gave Zane a weak smile and let him in. Inside, the house was oddly quiet. No music, no TV, just that heavy kind of silence that clings to old walls. They hung out for a bit, played some games, cracked a couple drinks. But the longer Zane was there, the more off Grant seemed. He wasn't talking like himself. His words came out slow, and he barely responded when Zane brought up old memories or asked what he'd been up to. It was like the guy sitting next to him looked like Grant, but didn't feel like him. Still, Zane tried to brush it off. Maybe he was stressed, or just going through something. Around midnight, Zane suggested they call it a night. But Grant shook his head, eyes half closed, and insisted they stay up. Said it was important. "Just not yet," he mumbled. Zane pushed back. He could tell Grant was barely holding himself together. But the more he suggested turning in, the more Grant pushed not to. There was something desperate about it. Like he needed Zane to stay awake. Like empty. Completely empty except for a single twin bed pressed against the far wall. No lamp, no decorations, no closet door. The walls were bare. The floorboards looked freshly cleaned. The bed, it was brand new. Plastic wrapping still crinkled under the fitted sheet. It didn't feel like a guest room. It felt like a setup. Still, Zane sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out his phone. He messaged Grant's girlfriend, hoping she'd give him some insight. Just a casual, "Hey, Grant's acting a little off," Everything good between you two?" Her reply came less than 2 minutes later. "I haven't seen him in 4 months. We broke up. I moved out in February." Zane just stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Grant told him she was just away for the weekend. Why lie about that? That's when he noticed the sound. A slow shuffle. A shadow passed across the gap beneath the door. Zane stood up, his heart hammering. He waited, pressing his ear to the wood, but heard only silence. Slowly, he opened the door into the dark hallway. All the lights were off now. The air in the house felt thicker. He turned to head back toward the living room when something on the inside of the bedroom door caught his eye. Something that hadn't been there before. A metal bracket, screwed into the wall and into the door frame. A fresh one, like it had just been put up. It was a lock mount, one of those you'd use to bolt someone in. Zane stepped back, throat dry. Something else glinted from the corner of his eye. On the kitchen counter sat an open package, a deadbolt set, half assembled, the screws still lying beside it. He didn't even have time to process it all before he heard fast, heavy footsteps behind him. Grant, coming at him. That same hollow, drained look in his eyes, that dead expression. He didn't speak, just stared, and kept walking forward. Zane backed up, asking him what the hell he was doing. Grant didn't respond, didn't blink. Zane turned and ran. He bolted for the door, Grant calling out his name, in that same tired, almost pleading voice. But Zane didn't stop. He flung open the front door, jumped in his car, and didn't even check his mirrors as he peeled out of that driveway, gravel flying behind him. By the time he got home, Grant had blocked him on everything: phone, socials, even gaming accounts. He never reached out again. Zane never went to the police, though he still wonders if he should have. But what would he say? That his friend tried to lock him in a room, that may have been waiting for something worse? That a deadbolt